To Mr. Pomeroy for 3 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your role in preparing this budget, which at last accounts for what all of us knew were accruing liabilities of the federal government but not reflected in the budget. It was time for those budget games to the American people to end, and I believe you've ended it with the budget submission of the administration. There's considerable discussion about the new taxes that might accrue on the wealthiest in this country. I would like you to tell us something of what has been the economic trends relative to accumulation of wealth, the relative distribution of income in this country leading up to this budget, reflected through perhaps the years since the turn of the millennium.
Thank you, Congressman. If you look back, we have this long-term rising trend in inequality, and over the last decade, in particular, you see the largest income gains going to the small fraction of the most affluent Americans. So that's an inexorable long-term trend. You can see it in all the numbers. And as you said, what the President's proposing to do is to bring more fairness and balance to the overall tax code. And the vast majority, 95% of working Americans, will see a reduction over time in the taxes applied to them.
Now, how did that group fare relative to wage earnings during, for example, the years of this decade?
You're absolutely right. The income gains for those richest Americans rose at a dramatically more rapid rate than they did for the average American. And
I believe a statistic that I've heard, on average, so it's not entirely revealing, but it's 7% annually on vast income, while the middle class, over the cumulative years, $1,000 altogether. Does that sound roughly approximate?
That may be roughly right. Sounds rough orders of magnitude.
Do you believe that we can sustain an economic recovery with the stalling out of the middle class and the concentration of wealth at the very top of this country?
I don't believe so. I think our country will be stronger if we're giving all Americans a greater chance to participate in our economy, make sure they have access to education so they can do so, make sure that they have the type of assistance they need to get through hard times, and that will make our economy not just more just, but more productive in the future.
I've looked at some of those tables, and I haven't seen distribution imbalances like that until the years leading right up to the Great Depression. And I'm personally convinced there's not a coincidental relationship about the economic tailspin we had then and the economic tailspin we have now. A final point, Mr. Secretary. I've sent a letter to Treasury. You don't have to respond to this. I just want to call it to your attention now that I have you here. Pensions are suffering some deep trouble. There is a call made by Treasury that made their funding crisis worse at this moment. It can be administratively addressed. I believe the circumstances would, in fairness, drive Treasury to that action. I will be telephoning you to discuss this further.
Thank you for your letter. I've read your letter and understand your concern, and we're looking very carefully at whether we can address that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yield back.